I panicked. My father-in-law came in again with ropes. I tried to fight him, but he was too strong. He tied me and my son together.
You're going to burn to death and get out of my son's life. You and this bastard, die.
No, don't do this to me, sir. I beg of you. Please, please. He ignored me and went out, leaving the door open. The smoke had doubled now, and I could barely see anything. I was in tears. My father-in-law had left the house. I could see the fire already coming up the stairs. I screamed and cried for help, hoping someone heard me. But no help came. Hi, my name is Grace. I'd met Collins about a year and a few months ago, and we'd been dating for a year. He proposed marriage to me 2 weeks back, and I happily agreed. We were both in love with each other and were sure about what we wanted. He'd taken me to see his parents, and we were sitting together in their living room, the couple sitting opposite us.
Mom, Dad, this is Gracie. I found love in her, and I want to marry her. I proposed to her already, and she agreed.
His mother was more friendly. She smiled at me and welcomed me. However, for his father, it was different. He had an unreadable expression on his face.
Marriage with her? What happened to Stacy? Weren't you both in a relationship?
Collins had told me about her. They'd truly dated after being best friends for a very long time. But they broke up barely a month later after realizing they didn't match as relation partners. Collins told his dad that nothing was between them, and the man went quiet. Until I left, he kept throwing cold glances at me and refused to contribute to the wedding plan conversation. After we left, Collins apologized. I didn't hold any grudges, though. Our wedding finally happened, and my father-in-law was absent. His excuse? Well, his friends wanted to have a drink with him because they hadn't had one in a while. And my father-in-law decided to drink with them on my wedding day. Collins had been so pissed, but I calmed him. I didn't want him being angry on our big day. He felt so bad about his dad's actions, but we got to enjoy the wedding without him. We'd both been granted a week holiday for our honeymoon. Instead of going somewhere else, I'd told Collins it would be better to have it at home. We were building a family house, so we put the money for traveling and others into it. On the second day of our honeymoon, my father-in-law suddenly showed up. I was more than shocked to see him. I looked down and saw that he was with a bag. He brushed us off and walked into the house.
It's our honeymoon, Dad. What the hell are you doing here?
The man didn't respond. Quietly, he showed himself in and went into our guest room. Throughout the week, he didn't give us any time to be alone. He was always taking Collins away or playing loud songs to disturb us. The week didn't go well. My father-in-law will boss me around and complain about all the food I cooked, comparing me to Stacy.
I wish my son had married Stacy. Instead, she's more pretty, educated, and cooks better.
I felt bad. Collins, on the other hand, nearly lost his cool and wanted to kick him out, but I stopped him. It's fine, baby. We can have our honeymoon every day. Don't disrespect your father over this. He did listen to me. After a week, my father-in-law packed his bags and left as quietly as he came. We had to resume working, but we never failed to create time for ourselves. A year later, I got pregnant with our first child. Collins and my mother-in-law were overwhelmed with happiness. But my father-in-law was different.
How are we even sure the pregnancy belongs to my son? For all we know, you could just be trying to pin someone else's child on him. Excuse us. What is that supposed to mean, Dad? Am I wrong? She has the appearance of a prostitute. Stacy was never like this. Well, Stacy is out of my life. Understand that, okay?
I was offended by his words, but my mother-in-law whispered an apology to me. My father-in-law stormed out of the house. We left about an hour later. Collins apologized, but I told him I didn't take any offense. During my 4th month, Collins was transferred to a different branch, where he worked as the overseas ambassador of the company, meaning he would have to go on trips. I knew I'd miss him, but it was all for our future. I had to be strong. I'd already stopped going to the office after reaching my 3rd month. The company had accepted my request to work from home. Since Collins traveled a lot, I was always home. My mother-in-law was a part-time teacher. Whenever she was returning home, she usually stopped by to help me with things. That made everything easy for me. One day, my father-in-law suddenly visited me. I was surprised to see him, as he hadn't shown any form of care since I got pregnant.
Are you going to leave me standing here, you mannerless girl?
I quickly ushered him in. He walked to the living room and sat on the couch. I grabbed my laptop from the dining table and followed him.
Stop standing there like a fool and get me a beer.
Luckily, we still had beer in the house. I dropped my laptop on the table in front of him and rushed to the kitchen. I fetched a can of beer and brought it to him. It was so swift. As he opened it, I can't tell how it happened, but I saw my laptop immediately go blank as he spilled the beer on it. He poured the remaining on the floor before standing up. I was horrified.
I heard you're still working. Well, with your laptop gone, I don't think you can continue. Clean up the floor. It's what you're meant to be doing. Cooking and cleaning.
I watched as he walked away. I immediately called Collins and told him about it. He was livid. He wanted to pause his trip and returned home to confront his father, but I begged him not to. I'll just get a new laptop. It's just so unfair that he hates me this way. Collins apologized to me and promised a new laptop the next day. Luckily, I was able to retrieve important things from the old one, and my job didn't stop. The next time he suddenly visited, he broke glass cups everywhere in the house and asked me to pack them all like a true housewife. I tried to, but I couldn't pack it all. I even sustained injuries in both my feet and hands. My mother-in-law came around while I was at it and screamed as she saw me. I told her about what her husband did, but also begged her not to confront him. She agreed and immediately took me to a hospital. While I was getting treated, she contacted a professional cleaning agency, and they helped with the cleaning. Collins got to know about it through his mom, and he called his dad and warned him never to visit me again or he would call the cops on him. Luckily, the threat worked, and he didn't visit again. Even at the hospital after I put to birth, he didn't show up, nor did he call to congratulate me. I didn't mind. Collins was able to stay home with me and our child for a month, but afterward, he had to go back to work. My mother-in-law came to stay with me. She promised to be with me and her grandkid for 6 months. One day, 2 months later, my mother-in-law left me to do some grocery shopping. I knew she'd take a long time because the shop was quite far. I decided to pass the time with movies. However, 10 minutes after she left, I suddenly heard the doorbell. I went to open it and was shocked to see my father-in-law. He looked like he was high or drunk. He pushed me outside and walked into the house. "Why are you here? Collins asked you not to visit me." He slapped me, the force pushing me to the floor.
I'm going to kill you and that bastard child of yours. You're undeserving of my son, you ugly thing. I hate your every existence.
What did I ever do to you?
You managed to turn my son against me. I simply hate you. Now come here.
He pulled me up by my hair and dragged me up to my room, ignoring my cries and pleading for him to stop. He locked me in my room and went downstairs. The next time he opened the door, he roughly threw my son at me. Luckily, I caught him. I cried and begged my father-in-law to not do anything stupid, but it all fell on deaf ears. I wanted to call someone, but I wasn't with my phone. I didn't hear anything, so I didn't know what he was up to. However, about 5 minutes later, smoke was getting into my room from beneath the door. I panicked. My father-in-law came in again with ropes. I tried to fight him, but he was too strong. He tied me and my son together.
You're going to burn to death and get out of my son's life. You and this bastard, die.
No, don't do this to me, sir. I beg of you. Please, please. He ignored me and went out, leaving the door open. The smoke had doubled now, and I could barely see anything. I was in tears. My father-in-law had left the house. I could see the fire already coming up the stairs. I screamed and cried for help, hoping someone heard me. But no help came. I looked at my child, and he didn't seem like he was breathing. I panicked even more. I was starting to lose my breath, but I didn't care. All I worried about was my child. Finally, before passing out, I saw some uniformed men hurrying in. Please, save my child. Please. Luckily, we were rescued. Apparently, my mother-in-law had forgotten her card at home. She'd come back to take it, but met the house on fire. She immediately contacted the firemen, and that was how I got saved. I didn't get burns, but I inhaled a lot of smoke alongside my son. Collins immediately returned home after my mother-in-law informed him. My father-in-law was nowhere to be found, but they didn't worry. That didn't last long, though. The cops immediately swung into action when I told them my father-in-law was the one behind the fire. Collins also went in search of him. According to what I heard a day later, my father-in-law had been found with a broken rib, jaw, nose, and ankle. Collins had found him first and beat him up that badly before contacting the police. He was taken to court. With my testimony and the CCTV footage, he was found guilty. My mother-in-law also sued him for domestic violence. He'd been abusing her for years, and the fire incident made her finally report him. He was guilty of arson, attempted murder, and domestic violence. He went to jail to serve his 40 years term with a permanently damaged ankle, broken rib that made him unable to stand straight, and jawbone issues. My mother-in-law also got a divorce from him, and both she and her son cut all ties with him. We moved into our new house, which Collins had completed and planned to show to me on my birthday. Well, my father-in-law didn't make that possible. Anyway, I was fine. And so was my child. My mother-in-law said she was happier without him. She loved and took care of me even more, and Collins was able to get the company to give him more free time so he could spend more time with me and our son. 5 years later, I visited my father-in-law with my son, and I could see the deep regret on his face when he saw how grown the boy he'd tried to kill had become. This is the last time you'll be seeing him. I'm happy you won't get to be a part of his life. I hope you rot in here for hating and hurting me for no reason. Goodbye. He was crying and begging for my forgiveness. But, just as he did on the day he set the house on fire while I was tied up in the room, I ignored him and walked away with my son. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.